Welcome to Learning. My name is Dr. Ben. Today, we're going to learn some awesome stuff. Learning is for everyone. Let's make it fun and enjoyable. Sit back and listen to the facilitator as we dive into our topic for today. Enjoy.
Thanks, Dr. Ben. Hello, everyone. My name is Ruby. I will be your facilitator for this lesson. Today, we are going to discuss the types of government. Please ponder this essential question as we study the lesson together. What does the idea of democracy mean to you? Let's dive into today's lesson. Let's take a look at our lesson objectives, foundations of government, types of government. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to discuss the systems of government, describe the constitutional governance, outline major types of governments, and discuss the principles of democracy. Let's look at the systems of government. All governments tend to reflect their society's history and culture, and all societies must organize their governments to carry out important functions. Political scientists classify governments in a way that is according to how democratic they are, and according to how power is divided between the country, its states, cities, or provinces. A unitary system of government gives all powers to the central government. This does not mean that only one level of government exists, but rather, the only powers that states or local government have are those expressly given to them by a central government. While centralized power can be an advantage, there is less power given to localities, which can be a disadvantage. Japan and France are examples. When the US first became independent from Great Britain, it formed a confederacy, or confederation, a loose union of independent and sovereign states. The new nation had many struggles under the Articles of Confederation. This weak central power was a disadvantage of this system. An advantage was the power it gave to the states. However, the early leaders created a new form of government. More power was provided to the national government. The Constitution created a national government of limited and specific powers, leaving all other powers to the states. Today, few countries are a confederation. The Asian nation called Federated States of Micronesia is one example. It has a weak central government and 4 independent states that maintain most authority, especially over its budgets. The US developed a federal system when it wrote its constitution. A federal system of government divides the powers of government between the national and state or provincial government. One advantage is that this system shares power among different levels of government, while still having more centralized power than in a confederate system. One disadvantage: each level of government makes its own laws. Please note, individual states in the US may have their own structure of government. Some states are unitary and make almost all important decisions for the whole state. In other states, power is shared with cities or counties. For example, Maryland gives its counties much more authority to make their own decisions than most states. The US framers sought to preserve liberty by diffusing power. Let's check your knowledge. Take your time and think on this question. You may pause the video and return to the lesson when you are ready. What are the key differences between federal, unitary, and confederate government systems in terms of power distribution? Take your time. Rewind the video, pause the video, and return to the lesson when you are ready. As we move into a discussion on constitutional governments, think on this question as you continue this lesson. In what ways do the powers of a constitutional government differ from those governments without a constitutional government? Let's move on to constitutional governments. A constitution is a plan that provides the rules for a government. It serves several purposes. 1. Sets out ideals that the people believe in and share. 2. Establishes the basic structure of government, defining its power and duties. And 3. It provides the supreme law for the country. Constitutions provide rules that shape the actions of government. Constitutional government refers to a government in which a constitution has authority to place clearly recognized limits on the powers of those who govern. Thus, constitutional government is limited government. A country would not be called a constitutional government simply because it has a written constitution. It must operate according to the principles in that constitution. Constitutions are important in creating a government framework. However, they are incomplete because they cannot foresee all laws, customs, and ideas that tend to grow within a government. For example, Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected 4 times as president. It was only when the 22nd Amendment went into effect that then a president was and is limited by law to 2 elected terms. A constitution does not always reflect actual government practice. For example, the People's Republic of China has a written constitution regarding basic rights and freedoms, but yet the Chinese government does not uphold many of those rights and freedoms. The citizens' freedoms of speech are rarely honored. While we keep the why of a constitution in mind, let's dive into the different ways governments are actually set up. Over the centuries, people have organized their governments in many different ways. In Saudi Arabia, for example, the ruling royal family controls the government. In Sweden, the people elect members of the Riksdag. In the Netherlands, the king, ministers, and state secretaries govern. Governments can be classified in many ways. One way is based on how power and benefits are assigned. Who governs? Who benefits? Who or what gives the government its powers? Governments that control all aspects of citizens' economic, political, and social lives are called authoritarian. Governments that give people economic, social, and political freedoms are democratic. Democracy depends on citizen input. Authoritarian governments are characterized by leadership that controls all aspects of its citizens' economic and social lives. These are sometimes referred to as totalitarian states because the government has total control. Power is concentrated in the hands of one or a few people. Opposition to the government is forbidden. Example: Stalin tried to control every aspect of Russian citizens' lives. There are some instances where authoritarian governments appear to have democratic features. They may hold elections as an example. However, if only one candidate appears on the ballot or opponents to the current leader are persecuted, the elections are considered a sham. Once in office, they tend to seize and take total control of the government they acquired through democratic elections. In authoritarian nations, there are few political freedoms, such as free speech or freedom of assembly. The media, such as newspapers, television, and radio stations, are typically owned and controlled by the government. Being that there are few restrictions on these types of governments, it can be difficult to contain the corruption. These governments use ruthless force or threats to maintain order. Frequently, people in minority groups are oppressed by authoritarian governments. The story below, Romania's Revolution, Then and Now, tells of the horrors faced by Roma and Hungarians under Nicolae Ceausescu during the 1980s. Copy the link below the image to read of Romania's revolution. Depending on how many individuals hold authority, authoritarian governments are also categorized as a dictatorship. A dictator is a single ruler who has total and unchecked power over a nation. An authoritarian government that gives power to a few people or a political party is called an oligarchy. Oligarchs derive their power from their wealth, social position, or military power, or both. Monarchy is a form of government where a single individual, such as a king, queen, or emperor, inherits the throne and heads the state. This form of government originated in ancient times when rulers were deemed sacred or sanctioned by religion. Monarchs who maintained power through intimidation or through the force of an army or police are viewed as autocrats. This is an absolute monarchy. In a constitutional monarchy, a monarch's powers are defined and limited by tradition or law. Democratic participation alongside the monarchy is key. Medieval kings, for example, were expected to consult with a council of nobles. In France, between 1791 to 1792, during the French Revolution, King Louis XVI shared power with a legislative assembly that limited royal authority under a constitution. Today, most monarchies still exist. Saudi Arabia, Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland, and Brunei are examples of countries where absolute monarchies still exist. Countries like Malaysia, the Netherlands, Sweden, and the United Kingdom are examples of current constitutional monarchies. Their rulers either share power with elected legislatures or serve as ceremonial figures. Authoritarians keep everyone in line with muscle, but democracies run on a handshake of trust. The cool thing about a democracy is that nobody is untouchable. If an elected official ignores the people who put them there, they can be voted out or legally kicked out of office. It's the ultimate way for regular people to keep the government in check. A democracy is a political system that is ruled by the people, either through representatives, where officials are elected to make decisions for the people, or directly, where the people vote on laws and policies. The word democracy is derived from the Greek word demos, meaning the people, and kratia, meaning rule. The ancient Greeks used the term democracy to mean government by the many rather than by a small elite. Pericles, a great leader of ancient Athens, said, "Our constitution is named a democracy because it is in the hands not of a few, but of the many." Not everyone in Athens voted. Only citizens could vote. This excluded women, foreign residents, and slaves, for they were not considered citizens. As Europe expanded, new democracies evolved. These systems still excluded many from voting. Voting was strictly reserved for the wealthy, landowners, merchants, and professionals. It wasn't until the early 1800s that Western European intellectuals began advocating for voting rights. As governments reformed, the right to vote slowly expanded first to the working class, and later to minorities and women. Democracies can be either direct or representative. A direct democracy is a government in which all citizens vote on issues and laws. In a representative democracy, voters elect representatives and give them the responsibility to make laws and conduct government. As aforementioned, in a democracy, the people rule, either by voting on everything themselves or by picking leaders to do it for them, with a focus on protecting everyone's rights. A republic is a specific type of government where the public and their elected leaders hold the power, and the country is led by a president instead of a king or queen. The US is a constitutional federal republic, meaning its power is checked by a written constitution shared between the country and individual states, and carried out by representatives elected by the people. Democratic success is closely tied to informed citizens, which explains why many nations prioritize universal public education. Furthermore, democracy relies on a vibrant civil society, a web of independent groups, like non-profits and religious organizations, to advocate for the public good and ensure government transparency. In the US, a diverse array of organizations, such as the American Red Cross, the Humane Society, the Sierra Club, churches, labor unions, and business groups, enable citizens to actively engage in their communities. Through participation in these groups, individuals assume responsibility, safeguard their rights, gain a practical understanding of democracy, and contribute to the political process. Let's move on to the subject of principles of democracy. Think on this question as we begin and further our discussion. What principles are central to democracies? Take your time and ponder this question. Pause the video, write out your responses with paper and pen, or type your thoughts using a laptop or PC. Return to the lesson when you are ready. Let's examine a few core principles, a belief or idea or behavior or fundamental truths that guide democracy. Active participation from citizens is a core foundation of a democracy. It's more than just a right. It is a responsibility you have as a member of society. This involvement can look like many things, such as voting, paying taxes, attending community meetings, serving on a jury, or joining the military. When people stay involved, it makes the whole country stronger and more effective. The will of citizens is expressed by electing officials to represent them in office. In a democracy, elections are held every few years. Elected officials must be chosen by the people in a free and fair manner. Most adult citizens should have the right to vote and run for office, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, and level of wealth. All votes should be counted equally, with no obstacles that make it difficult to vote. There should be no intimidation, corruption, or threats to citizens before or during an election. In every election, someone wins and someone loses. Occasionally, the losing side feels so strongly about their cause that they find it impossible to admit defeat. But if the vote was fair, ignoring the outcome goes against democratic values. For a democracy to work, there must be a smooth, peaceful handoff from one leader to the next. In a democracy, the same rules apply to everyone, from the president to ordinary citizens. Nobody gets a pass just because of their job or title. If someone breaks the law, they are held responsible. For the system to be fair, laws must be easy for everyone to understand and followed exactly the same way every time. Democratic accountability requires officials to act in the public interest and remain answerable to the people. Transparency, through open meetings and accessible information, empowers the public and the press to understand and scrutinize government decisions. Democratic integrity relies on preventing corruption, where officials exploit their positions for personal profit. By dividing power into 3 co-equal branches, executive, judicial, and legislative, the US creates a system of checks and balances to prevent any single entity from overstepping. These structures are reinforced by investigative agencies and courts to ensure all leaders remain subject to the law. Economic freedom is essential to democracy, requiring that the state respect private property rights and individual business ownership. Citizens must have the autonomy to choose their careers and participate in labor unions. Although the government's role in managing the market is constantly debated, total state control is widely considered incompatible with democratic values. In democracies, the integrity of the legal system depends on the independence of the courts. The judiciary must function as apolitical, insulated from political pressure or interference by executive and legislative bodies. Furthermore, judges must maintain high ethical standards, ensuring their rulings are based strictly on the law rather than personal gain or obligations to special interests. A political party is a group of individuals with similar interests who organize to nominate candidates for office, win elections, conduct government, and determine public policy. In democracies, more than one political party must participate in elections and play a role in government. Political parties give voters the opportunity to choose their candidates and policies. It's time to assess what you have learned from this lesson. Take the opportunity to review the questions on the screen in front of you. Pause the video, read the questions, and begin to research your answers. Return to the lesson when you are ready. Good luck. What did we learn today? Now that our lesson is over, you should now be able to 1. Discuss the systems of government. 2. Describe the constitutional governments. 3. Outline major types of governments. And 4. Discuss the principles of democracy. Thanks for taking the time to review this lesson. This concludes our lesson on the types of government. Do review the references provided for this lesson to further your study on the types of government. Thanks again, and have a great day. Reference page 1 of 5. Reference page 2 of 5. Reference page 3 of 5. Reference page 4 of 5. Reference page 5 of 5.